Hey guys, welcome to Hope It Helps, and my guest on the show today is Mr. Eddie Whittingham. Eddie, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. So, Eddie, I found out about you through LinkedIn, which I've found out through, I think, 90% of my my guests by now. And one thing from the get-go that really stood out to me was, I guess, your tone and the way you would talk about things on LinkedIn. It was very, for me personally at least, it was so refreshing. It was very real, no bullshit. This is what sucks. This is what went well, and saying it in a way like people a lot of times I think on LinkedIn especially, like you say a story in a way, but it's kind of like it's almost like a humble brag in a
Yeah.
way. And I'm always like, come on, it wasn't really like that. But so that really stood out to me. I love the content that you do, and I've done my research and listened to your story and everything, and I think to the experience you've had is and the lessons you've learned is so relevant, especially now, as you know, with COVID. I think a lot of people now are looking to either start a side hustle or completely leave their careers or start a new business. So I think this conversation right now is more than timely, and I think a lot of people will be able to learn from your experience and our conversation today. But before we get into everything, Eddie, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, a little bit about me. I grew up in a sort of working class background, northern town in England, not the most delightful of places. Um, yeah, I joined the police when I was 18, relatively naively. I was in the police for just shy of 10 years, did the kind of usual thing that people in the police do, sort of did 4 years, 999 response. I did a year sort of more covert work and then sort of 4 years in crime investigation. Um, Enjoyed it on the whole, but I hated the system and how it wasn't really supporting the victims and all that sort of stuff, which a lot of police officers get frustrated with, and decided to study law. And I guess I studied that at the time because it seemed like a logical next step. From the background that I'm from, I didn't probably maybe understand or appreciate all the different roles that are out there that you could do.
Sure.
Uh, it was kind of where I don't know if you have the game over in Dubai, we do in England called like Happy Families, where it's like literally you can be a doctor, a postman, a butcher, and it's like all those classic kind of job roles. Um, so I studied law full time. I dropped my hours in the police to 30 hours a week. So it was a really intense period in my life of hard work. Um, Eventually got my law degree, qualified as a solicitor, but I sat down on my first day and I hated it. Like I seriously hated it. And I think I just knew it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And that was the problem. So um, from that point, really kind of was thinking, I've always thought about in the back of my mind, maybe having my own business would be great. So the kind of next logical step for me was looking at my skill set. What can I do? What's a logical next step? In the law firm that I was at, we had some involvement with like private investigation companies,
Okay.
not particularly glamorous work. But I kind of looked at the invoices and things. I was like, well, I've got the skills to do that. That seems logical. So basically, long story short, as soon as I'd qualified, within a few months, I quit and started like a sort of private investigation / legal consultancy gig, literally just selling my time. And it was all right. But again, I kind of was like, I've worked all that time and got myself in loads of debt to now basically just be selling my time again. And I thought, it's not also the most reputable of industries to be in. So I kind of wanted to do something else a bit more scalable. Long story short, then moved on, built a online cybersecurity business, which basically provided online training about things like phishing emails, passwords, so on and so on. Completely self-taught, hadn't done cybercrime before, hadn't had a tech platform before, but just taught myself the basics. And I bootstrapped that. I was the sole founder, bootstrapped that sort of 3.5 years and then got acquired by a NASDAQ listed company. So a lot of luck involved in that. Obviously, I worked hard, blah, 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 but definitely a high degree of luck involved in that. And then since selling, I've just been working on a platform called GoFounder, which is just a platform to help people start and grow their own business effectively.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And thank you so much for sharing that story with us. In my mind, when I was doing my research about you, I'm like, okay, he was a police officer, and then went to law, and then did a startup, and now he's doing another start. So in my head, I'm like, that's so it's If you like, I bet if I asked you at 18 when you're a police officer, like ten years later, you have sold a startup and done it, you'd be like, that's so far from like out of your mind or what's possible.
Do you know what? And that's a really good point. I was chatting to someone recently who's got aspirations of starting their own startup, and they were like, "Yeah, but I could, I can't see me like doing what you've done." And I was like, "Yeah, but I couldn't when I started." Like that's the point, isn't it? You don't know unless you start. Like honestly, if you'd have said to me 10 years ago that I'd be where I am now, I just would not have believed it because I was, what was I doing 10 years ago? I was still in the police, thinking about leaving, probably excited about what the future might hold, but really having no idea I was moving city, all that sort of stuff. So you don't know unless you try.
Yeah.
Like it's not as easy as people say it is out there. There's a lot of bullshit out there about it. However, if you've kind of got that bug and you've got that natural tendency to want to do something like this, you're not going to know unless you take that leap of faith, and it might go wrong. So you need to be prepared for that financially, mentally, emotionally, all that sort of stuff. But if you don't try, you'll never know.
100%, man. I resonate with that a lot. So I've been doing the podcast now for almost 2 years, and now I have a consultancy where I'm helping companies launch their podcasts. I'm a hypnotherapist on the side. If you told me in Feb 2020 when lockdown happened, that 2 years later this is what I would be doing, not only let alone where I'd be, I would have told you like, what are you talking about? Like what,
Yeah.
how, why? But one thing you said that really resonated with me when I was reading online as well, and you just mentioned it now, the concept of luck. Now, we all talk about, yes, you need hard work. Yes, you need dedication. Yes, you need consistency. There's a lot of things that are on you in order for it to be successful, but there is that element of luck. And the question I wanted to ask you is, why is that the element that tends to be not spoken about enough in all these journeys that you hear from all these people that have built their companies?
It takes away from their achievement, doesn't it? Like,
Okay, yeah, I get
it,
that.
like so for me, my achievement in inverted commas, as painful as I kind of like to refer to it as, but if you think of that relative success of selling a business, um, for most people, by confessing that there's an element of luck, you are diminishing what you've achieved.
Mm,
Whereas I don't see it like that because I've still had to work really hard. I've still had to have that talent, but I'm an idiot if I'm going to convince you that I did that without a slice of luck. Like, because I know people who work damned harder than me, who are more talented than me, that haven't had that same, and again, I use the inverted commas, success as I might have had. But that's because I also had that other pillar of luck that was
mm,
involved. And it doesn't make a good story if you kind of confess there's a bit of luck, is the truth.
yeah.
And that's why I love making content. I love sharing my story. I like, hopefully helping other people along the way. The reason why, for example, my shit will never go viral and do well is because I'm honest. Whereas if I dress my story up with a load of bollocks, then it would go viral. Do you know what I mean? If I kind of played into the whole rags to riches, yeah. Look, I openly say I'm from a northern working class town. It's called Scunthorpe. There's not a lot there. That's part of my story and the truth. However, the other side of the story is I'm a white male. My parents lived together. We didn't have loads of money, but we had enough. I never went hungry. I was clothed, but whereas some people would massively lean into the,
Mm,
hardships, and it's a load of bollocks, isn't it? Really, a lot of the time. But people are a sucker for a good story, I'd rather just be honest. I'd
yeah.
rather do the hard.
I really respect that, man. I think we could go online right now, and if I wrote like start a business, you talked about it on your posts, and I've heard you mention it in other podcasts, that you will find 1,000 stories about 10x your income overnight, 3 quick tips to like success, like all that kind of stuff. But even through your experience, and everyone in the world knows that that's not the case. And I think I love what you said there. Everyone's a sucker for a good story, and I guess that's not something that I never thought of it like that. It's just, oh, that's a nice story, and that's why like I'm drawn into it. But just to come back on the luck for a second,
Yeah.
um, do you believe that you make your own luck? Because like you said, everyone, like there are people more, for example, more talented than you, or worked harder than you, but they didn't get that luck. So the question I think about is luck earned, or is it just luck?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think you hear people say that phrase a lot, like you make your own luck. And I know what they mean. My
Yeah.
interpretation of that is I don't think you make your own luck because, like I say, someone's probably trying to make their own luck a lot harder than I am, or they've got more talent to try and make their own luck. For me, that by putting in that hard work and by having that natural talent, you can get yourself in a position to benefit from the luck.
Mm.
And I think the bit where it gets slightly confusing, you can do all that hard work, you can have all that raw talent, but actually that luck never comes your way. So you're still working as hard as the next person. Now on the flip side, it's that classic, the harder you work, the more luck you might get. There's some element of truth in that, in the sense that, I didn't just create a business and got lucky. The backstory to that is I joined the police at 18, which was a young age to join the police. I worked really hard. I studied I studied full time at university while working 30 hours a week. Like, that was a hugely intense period of my life. And so all those things are building blocks. I even volunteered at a radio station in that period of time, just because I was kind of had an eye on, a bit more of a creative outlet that maybe I could go down that route.
Sure.
But they are all things that massively helped build to what I did in the end. So it's like, did I get the luck as a direct result of that hard work? No, because I still needed luck. But that direct hard work got me in the place to benefit from it.
Exactly. And I think that's the perfect way to talk about it. It's not making it, is that putting yourself in a position so if it does come around, you have the opportunity to seize it and make the most of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so for example, my company that was acquired, they acquired the company because they wanted sort of fresh, engaging, interesting content. Now, if I'd have never started the business, or I'd have, that company would have still been looking for that, but I wouldn't have been there. Someone else would have been there. And that's the difference in it. So it's getting yourself in that shop window to benefit from that opportunity, really.
Yeah, exactly. And you said it right. That's such a good point, that they were looking for it at the time, but if you hadn't done anything, you wouldn't have been the one to get that slice of luck, as we've been talking about. Um, I wanted to ask you, how do you think? Because, like you said, if you don't try, you never know. And you ended up where you with selling that company, or even starting that company, as a result of all the things you did during that time that led you to that. So, how would you say, I guess, your experience in the police and law helped you when it came to actually creating that company?
That's a good question as well. I guess for me, the police was just super grounding. Like, had to work really, really hard. The money was crap. You got a lot of abuse, really, quite frankly. So it certainly made me super resilient. And also, as daft as it sounds, like, I can pretty much go into any professional situation now. And some people are really nervous about various things, and I get it. Like, I like public speaking, but I still get mega nervous before I go in. Sure. However, I always kind of have this sanity check of, yeah, but I'm not going into a house where there's a guy running around with a knife and it's just me and him, and almost that perspective helps. So a little bit of that resilience, the ability to speak to people from all different backgrounds, I think is mega helpful. I think for me as well, I always think it's great to have a level of IQ. That's fine, and be book smart, but actually emotional intelligence trumps that. Now, I'm all right book smart. I'm not thick. I'm not super intelligent, but I think I'm quite good at the emotional intelligence side of things. And I think that was probably joining the police as young as I did, because I had to mature very fast. And that emotional intelligence weirdly helps with everything from dealing with members of staff, sales, massively in sales. So all that really helped. And then I guess the legal side of it, less the legal work itself, because I didn't really enjoy that. I still don't enjoy that side of it. But more me joining that law firm massively helped cure, or at least dampen down my kind of imposter syndrome, I guess.
Sure.
Because I think I still have, weirdly, imposter syndrome in some avenues of what I do, and I think everyone does.
100%.
And that's something people need to recognize. Everyone does. Elon Musk will probably have some things he's feels like he's being an imposter about. But yeah, for me, I think I joined a law firm on the back of a sort of a program for diverse applicants because I was from a not particularly affluent background, didn't have very good grades, and I was the first generation of my family to go to university. So I kind of went into it through a back door almost that I should have probably not been there in a way. So I kind of had that going on in my head. But then when I got there, I was like, well, I can do the job. I'm better than half of these people who are Oxford, Cambridge educated, etc., etc. It helped just me rationalize, actually, yeah, I am better than I thought. And I can hold my own in this sort of corporate environment, in these glass offices, as daft as that sounds. It sort of gave me that grounding to think, yeah, I'm probably more capable than I'm giving myself credit for.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually like listening to that, the lessons you took from those experiences. Number one, from your work as a police officer, like the example you use, like it's just a presentation, not a guy running around the house with a knife, and I have to like take care of it. Like it's kind of like that, that old saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." So I guess in your mind, you're like, I've had
100% like,
like, please go ahead.
yeah, no, 100%. Like, I one of my like great members of staff I had in my business, she came to me in tears one day because she'd made a mistake. Like, and she was really worried and shitting herself that she made the mistake. And I was like, chill. Like, no one's died. Like, if we'd have made a mistake like this in the police, someone might have died. but we're just dealing with people who've got computers. It's not a problem. Like, worst case scenario, we'll apologize. Don't worry about it. So like, just that perspective, it's helpful.
100%. And I think also what you were talking about emotional intelligence. I think I don't know. I think it's always been important, but I feel nowadays more than ever. I think, but like if you look at the last 20 years, it was all about how much knowledge do I have? Like it was all IQ based. What technical skills do I have? But I think the world has shifted to a much more personal approach. It's much more important now to be able to deal with people and not just your own emotions, but how to manage teams. And in the Zoom world now, like all this kind of stuff, this is where it has become so important.
Definitely. And look, you can read all the books on marketing, but actually being personable and having creative ideas, they don't. And that for me, creativity and book smarts don't always go hand in hand. Typically, they don't go hand in hand. So in the era of like TikTok and all this sort of other new marketing waves that we're seeing, inevitably it's actually the kind of people who are more personable that tend to do better.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, man. That's so true. And on the example that you just mentioned about your colleague, and just you telling her like chill, whatever. I was thinking, I'm like, the problem in those situations is that everything's, I guess, based. Her perspective is only based on the life experiences and things that she's had. She hasn't experienced the level of stress and anxiety and worry that you have. So for her, it's all relative to, I guess, your own experiences. When it comes to that kind of stuff, what would you say?
Yeah, I agree, and it's relative. Like, I think for me, like as a kind of manager, I'd never managed people before, so that was new to me. But I guess all I tried to do with stuff like that is emulate the good bosses that I had, and do the opposite of the bad ones. But like, I was really lucky in my time in the police, particularly, and I had a fantastic supervisor in the law firm where I could look to them and go, do you know what, they had these amazing traits. If I can pull out those amazing traits, then I'm going to be a decent-ish boss. I mean, I'm not the person to comment if I've been a decent boss, obviously, but trying to at least do my best and be there as much as I could for the staff, and just try and take those good traits from other people, I think.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And obviously, from those traits, you take the good from the bad, and you try to implement them to provide the people you're trying to manage or help or support with the same kind of experience. That's how you want them to feel, kind of like what you felt. I wanted to talk about, because you mentioned this. So I've listened to two podcasts. You're on the one with habits and the one on kickoff. And one thing you said, and this is a question that I just wrote down right before we started because it just came into my mind, was you mentioned when you began your other business, the startup. It was you and your wife. I don't know if I can't remember if she was your wife at the time, but And it takes time for these things to actually work and to start generating revenue. And when it's a single, if one person's working and the other is trying to like build a business and stuff, and there's kind of like, I feel such a big time pressure that you must feel with that, because you want to, also contribute, you want to do that, but this is like also your dream and you think that you see the potential for this in the future. So I guess, could you tell us a bit about how did you manage, that experience, because the longer it goes on, the harder things get, and that starts to affect relationship and everything.
Super tough, yeah. So you got to think, when I first met my wife, or now wife, I was coming out of the police. So she kind of came on board, and we kind of joined forces at a point in my life where I was moving city to go be a solicitor at this big city law firm. So like, if I put myself in her shoes, she's kind of like got with a guy who's going to go on to like hopefully have a good job. He literally sits down the first day in the job and says, yeah, fucking hate this. Want to start my own business. But to her credit, she's been phenomenally supportive all the way through everything I've done. And we've sort of stopped a few times. I've said like, why? We're like, why did you put your faith in it and me? And she's like, because I just trusted that you'd be able to do it. And I think if you're starting a business and you're looking to be in a relationship, they need to know and be 100% on board, because I think you're going to put them through the mill anyway. So like, when I'd obviously quit my job within months of getting being qualified. So a trainee salary in the UK for a solicitor that I was on 25k. I qualified, which put me up to I think it was 38k. So like a decent wage. But then within months, I just quit that. So like, literally, I've worked so hard to get to that higher wage, and then I've just jacked it in, and to go down to nothing. And I managed to blag a part-time lecturing gig just to pay some bills, which was something. But yeah, I mean, we relied solely, really, apart from me getting a few £100 here and there for lecturing, on her bringing in the bacon and paying for the bills. And she's a teacher; she wanted mega money. So we kind of adjusted our lifestyles accordingly. We didn't have a nice car. We didn't really go out much. So we just bought a house, needed loads of things doing to it, couldn't afford to do all that. So we're kind of living in a house which was a bit shit. We had newspapers on our bedroom windows for about 6 months, like not even kidding you.
Wow.
We didn't have the money for curtains. We got curtains as a Christmas present. Like, that is just stupid, isn't it? But we kind of made those sacrifices. We didn't go on holidays. We curbed going out for meals, all that sort of stuff. And that sounds a little bit like, I don't know, a bit like we were knuckling down and we didn't enjoy it. But actually, we loved that, because in fairness, we were very lucky to get our own house, and we cherished that, and we weren't asked. We were quite happy in the house with some cheap beers from the shop as we were going out and having a nice meal, because we were quite happy just in our house in each other's company. So we were very lucky. But yeah, it was a long journey.
Yeah.
Then I started the private investigation, so I was just starting to make some money from that. And then we'd gone to the gym one morning, and I said to her, I've had this idea to build this other business, and it's a scalable business that I think, longer term will be better for us. And she was like, yeah, whatever. We just sat on the sort of benches in the gym side by side. She said, yeah, what if you think that's what we should do, then go for it. And that's crazy, isn't it? Like, when you think, she'd seen me go from police to solicitor, jack the solicitor, start this new business, jack that in effectively, to then go for this harebrained idea of something bear in mind, I had no experience in. And she went, yeah, just go for it. And she bought into that. And, she was a full-time teacher. She was tutoring on the side. I roped her into doing the voiceovers for all the online training. So she was working damn hard with me as well. And yeah, I owe her a lot for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a beautiful story, man. And I really respect, because like you said, I feel since you're the one who's got like, you're trying to do all these different things, you're trying to, make that one thing work. It not only is it pressure on you as the person to make it work for yourself, but when you're in a relationship, there's another person that you have to care about, and there's also, you know, a time factor, because the longer things go on, the harder things get, and so on. So
Yeah.
listening to that story is super refreshing. But I wanted to ask you, if to all the people out there that are looking to start a business right now, that are in married or in relationships, long-term relationships, that are living together, you know, you share basically, that are sharing a life together, what advice would you have to them if they do want to make that decision? What are some of the things that, you know, could maybe help them get through it?
I think having some real honest conversations with one another about expectations, and as naive as everyone is when they first start a business, they think they're going to make money quickly, and the reality is that probably won't happen. It depends. If you're doing a service, if you're doing a service-based business, you probably can get up and running quite quickly. If you're launching, like in my case, it was software as a service, that's going to take a long, long time to build. So having those honest conversations and being brutally honest, mate, I think these couples need to also think about what do they want in the short term, because if you're really, really committed to, for example, you want a sale of a business, you are going to have to sacrifice a lot. And you're going to have, that means your holidays, your nice car that you've leased, you know, all your meals out, all these things that we love to do in life. I'm not saying that everyone will have to do this, but I think for the vast majority, if you're serious about scaling the business, you are going to have to cut them back.
Mm.
And I can look back in hindsight and say, you know, thankfully that worked out for me, but it might not have done. We might have sacrificed all that shit and never got there. So there's that honesty you need to have with one another. That I think is really important, because there's a lot of sacrifice there. And for me, just for context, the reason why we both were happy having those sacrifices, you know, we could have taken a wage out earlier, we could have gone on holidays. The theory always was, between me and my wife, and it was a shared mentality, was, why would we take 10 or 20 grand out of the business when we could hire someone, or we could spend 10 grand on that, or, you know, and basically build the business. Let's keep building as long as we can, and live like this very almost minimal lifestyle in terms of luxuries for as long as we can be asked, and like almost endure in a way,
Yeah.
in the hope that it will pay off. And obviously we were very lucky that it did pay off. It might not have done. But to be honest, at that point where we were getting to where the exit was, we were at that point where the endurance probably was wearing thin. So we probably would have started to pull money out of the business and enjoy life a bit more, and take money out of the business, and, you know, and accept that. But certainly there's going to be short-term pain for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's some really, really great advice, man, because I think that this part of like the startup discussion is something that isn't talked about much. And I think, like you said, having a brutally honest conversation with your partner, I think like you said, you both need to be comfortable with the journey you're about to go on. And I think you have to also kind of like you said, be resourceful with how you spend your money. Like, instead of, like you said, instead of paying 10 grand now to, like, let's go on vacation or whatever, why don't we hire someone to move this forward, you know? But like you said, there is a time limit on that, and everyone's will be different. And also, to keep it real, is sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it just might not work out. And on that part, so in one of the podcasts you were talking about how a lot of times many startups think they're going to be, you know, the next unicorn, which, if we're looking at reality, probably not the case. You look at the stats, look whatever, it's probably not the case. But I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay.
And I'm kind of like, okay, there's reality and there's like my dream. You know what I mean? That dream, you know, this is what I've always wanted to do. I'm doing the startup. This is the dream I've always wanted, you know, to make it successful, to make it big, and so on. And sometimes the reality could be so stacked against you that dream seems so out of reach. But that's why I look at people like think about, I had a podcast the other day and I said the same thing about Elon Musk. Like, this guy, imagine I came to you, I'm like, hey bro, I'm gonna make an electric car company and it's gonna take over the world. Oh, also, I'm gonna go to space for like 1/10 of the cost. Like, that's the dream, and then the reality at that point is you're out of your fucking mind. But he did it. But again, we come back to it's it's not it's almost not supposed to happen. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so how do you kind of like balance that, like, dream versus reality?
Uh, Really good question. I think so. Elon Musk is a really interesting one because I think when you look in his background, you realize he had a head start
Yeah.
compared to most. If I'd have tried to do what he's done with Tesla, no chance. I just didn't have the backing financially, not from the right background, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's really interesting because I sometimes can be perceived as negative because I like tell people, I guess, what I see as the reality.
Yeah.
Um, that's not to say you shouldn't pursue your dream. All I sometimes think it's about tapering the dreams. So, like,
Okay.
people think they're going to start the next unicorn. You're probably not. Statistically, you're probably not. So that's a simple, obvious statement. But I think the thing that people get maybe caught up on is they think in order to be like a multimillionaire, you need to have a unicorn idea. You
Mm.
don't. There are tons and tons and tons of millionaires that you've never heard of. So you don't need to be Elon Musk or Zuckerberg to be super wealthy and have a dream lifestyle. You just need to come up with a business that can get you there. And the business might not be sexy. It could be boring as shit. It could be something that there's already a million competitors in it, but you just do something better.
Yeah.
Like you don't. I think you don't always have to have a unique idea. And I think sometimes people place that dream, they attach it to a unique idea, and I think that's where it gets a bit blurred. Whereas actually, I'm all for dreaming, like dream big, go big. I like you said, if I look back 10 years, I'd have been buzzing to have kind of had the last 10 years that I've had. But I'm not done yet, and I've got aspirations and what I want to achieve in the next 10 years. I'm dreaming big, but I'm also, you know, a realist. So
Yeah.
it's just having, dream, please do dream big, but just don't get caught up in the sort of social media hype around investment. And you've got to be Zuckerberg or Musk or whatever to be, in inverted commas, successful. You can be a millionaire with a pretty boring business.
Absolutely, man. And I love what you said, that I love the way you talked about it. Tapering your dream. And I think, and that's not to say to, not like you're saying, not dream big, not have that big vision, what you want for your life, what you think success is, that huge, level of success is. I think it's tapering your dream to, I think a dream, like I thought about this now. I think your dream should be broken down into stages. That's how you
Yeah.
taper it out. So like my dream is in 2 years, I want to have $2 million in the bank. Okay, that's one dream. Cool. And then that's not the big dream, but this is my like first dream. It kind of becomes kind of like, I guess, kind of like goal setting in a way.
100%. And that's a really good example, because say you want to go from naught to £2 million in 2 years, right? So let's work backwards from that. How much are you going to have to earn month by month to get that? Or how much revenue is a business going to need to have a potential exit value of that? If I made that business, who would buy that business? So you can work backwards from your goals. But just, yeah, and I guess why I say like tape your dreams, like I know someone who was adamant they wanted to sell out a business for 50 million.
Okay.
Like that was the number they had in their head.
Okay.
Great, super admirable, blah blah blah. I sold for less than 50 million. I won't tell you how much because it's personal, but
Sure.
it wasn't 50 million. And we had the discussion, and he was like, I don't think I'd sell for what you sold for because I want to hit 50 million. And I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. I completely understand that. But then 6 months later, he's out of business.
Okay.
So, you know, you've also got to recognize when there's a good deal on the table.
Mm.
And that's not, not being belligerent. It's not being arrogant in pursuit of your dreams as well. It's also being realistic. Like for me, it was a fantastic offer. It was a multi-million-pound offer. And I couldn't say no, because that gives me the scope to basically do whatever I want in terms of career aspirations, home life, you name it. But I could have, if I'd have had this weird dream in my head or number that I'd fixated on, I'd have said no to that.
Mm.
But that exit that I've had might well be the key to another big exit later down the line.
Yeah.
It's a balance, but I think sometimes people get so hooked on their dreams that they lose sight of them weirdly.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I totally understand that. And you kind of just segued perfectly onto my next question, because this is something I think that not a lot of people talk about either, is knowing when to exit. So, and you just told you were just talking about how for you the exit it made sense because it opened so many other doors for you, and probably maybe took you to that next, to push you to the next chapter or the next place that you actually were looking to go to. But the question I have for you is, like, how do you know when it's the right time to exit? There's all these stories, like, for example, Facebook wanted to buy, I can't remember when, they wanted to buy Snapchat for $1 billion. They said no, $1 billion. And they said no. And then I think 4 years later, it was worth like 10, 15 billion. And so it's a two-part question. How do you know when it's the right time to exit? Especially when you have that, this is my baby. The business, you have that emotional attachment, to your business, and rightly so. You've invested so much time and effort and resources and money and of your life to get this to where it is. And now sometimes I guess you can feel like you're just letting it go. It's, there's a struggle. There's a struggle there between, do I let this go now, or is this offer might not come back? How do you make that decision?
It's super difficult. Like, no question about it. Like, I definitely had that kind of moment where I was like, right, I either can sell this for what is a very, very good offer, and these are the positive implications it will have for my life, or do I keep it and keep working on it in the hope that I eventually get a bigger offer? Where I sort of settled in my mind, and again, I think it's probably a personality type. I settled in my mind, I was like, well, I'm now gambling that number on a future event. Truthfully, I'm relatively confident I could have built that business. Well, I would have carried on building it, no question. I'm very confident about that. However, I might not have got that other bit of luck that I need again. Maybe that's my luck. So how far do I push it? And also, like, how greedy are you? Like,
that's a great point.
And with respect, there's only so much you can do with money and how much you want to do with money, and that's it's a super relative thing. I completely appreciate. But for me, it was like life-changing amount of money, can buy dream house, can pursue multiple other investments, can support my family. We can do largely do what we want. So it's like, well, what more than that would I want? Would I want to buy a football team? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because it becomes like a silly a point past which people get too rich. Like, I don't think we should have billionaires personally. I think it's ridiculous. It's just a stupid level of wealth. That's completely unnecessary. So it's kind of that. So I just say to people, like, if they're in a position and knowing when to sell, like, how greedy are you? Like, what do you really want? And will that actually give you the happiness? Is that what you're after? And some people it will, maybe, but I largely think it won't. In terms of like that emotional attachment to the business, that's a really good point. Yeah. The conversation is really interesting. I had quite a lot of conversations with my mom. She's in no way business minded, but she was always like, quite direct. Will you regret selling it? And I was like, will I regret selling it? That is a really good question. And it's something I mulled over for quite a while. And for me, I always had built it with the thought of I might eventually sell it.
Okay.
So I didn't feel overly emotionally invested in it. I loved what we'd built. I loved the brand. I loved everything about it. But it wasn't something that I felt like I was selling part of my soul for. Plus, I got such a good deal out of it that it was a fair trade, is probably the way to put it. So it's not like, you know, if I look back now and thought, oh, I sold too cheap there, I'd have that regret, I think. But because for me, the value in it was more than fair, I was like, this is a no-brainer, really. And I always said I don't want to regret selling it, because
For sure.
I don't think you'll get loads of opportunities to build great businesses. And I was in the process of building one. So I always said I don't want to ever regret selling it. And, you know, hand on heart, I can say I don't have a single regret. And that is super like freeing, because then I know for me that was the right decision. And there's multiple reasons and some of which I've just spoke about, like the value, the timing, because COVID had just kicked off, probably even my own interest levels, as daft as that sounds. Like, would I have had that same tenacity that I had for those first 3 years for the next 3 years? Probably not. I think I've become to realize that about my personality type. I like new challenges. So would I have held it back as it grew? Possibly. So there's lots of different factors. So yeah, if someone's building a business, I'd say try not to get too emotionally invested in it, because if you're thinking about selling it, and then whatever you do, you need to have no regrets, but always ask yourself, am I being greedy? Like Snapchat, you know, don't get me wrong, they obviously got valued more, but might not have done, and you might have just kissed goodbye to $1 billion.
Yeah.
And like, you know, really, like, how much more money? If someone gave you £100 million, or gave you £200 million, or £10 million, or £20 million, how much different would really that make? You're still going to buy a big house, buy a twatty car, go on a nice holiday. It's true though, isn't it? Like you know, all you're going to do is buy a sports club or some shit like that. You know, the difference is, if I'd have sold for 100 million, I'd have probably bought my local football team, which,
Yeah, for sure.
would have been terrible business. Do you know, it's like, I don't know, have an awareness of what you need to be happy.
Yeah, I think, man, that's so many great points there. You know, all the questions, all the things that I guess for anyone considering an exit or in the future planning, you know, an exit for the business, you know, how greedy are you? Will you have, do you still have the same interest in the business that you did when you started? How good is the deal? You don't want to sell it for, you know, you don't want to sell it for cheap either. But I think the main thing that I took from that is not necessarily on the regret, but asking yourself the questions. Let's say I'm getting £10 million for this deal. What are the things I want to do in life? What are the things that I need a certain amount of money to accomplish or do? Does this satisfy them? Okay, then I don't. Yeah, it's again, it's a very personal thing. Everyone's gonna struggle with it on so many ways, and
that's it. If someone says to you, right, here's 10 million today for your business that it is now. If 10 million is enough for you to do whatever you want in life and achieve the things you've always wanted to achieve, yeah, get out. Yeah, sure, negotiate hard and make sure there's no money left on the table.
Absolutely.
Obviously. But you've got the option then to take that 10 million, or you could keep working for another 10 years and get 20 million. But how much that extra 10 million, what are you going to do with that? That's really going to change your life that much compared to that. It's relative though, isn't it? If you're in a starting position, like for example, if I built another business, would I sell that next business for what I sold this business? Don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'd want more. But again, it comes back to, what would I want the money for?
Yeah.
You know, what am I going to do with that money? So again, it'd be being realistic about what you need from it, or maybe what you're going to do with that money. And you might be, you know, you might have plans to be very charitable with that money. You might have plans to help out, you know, underprivileged sectors of the community, or whatever it might be. So yeah, they might be different drivers. But if it's just cars, house, blah blah. Like for me, for example, I have we bought a fantastic sort of dream house. It's everything we've ever wanted. It's not, however, where all the footballers live. because I personally couldn't think of anything fucking worse than that. But for some people, that's their dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
So their dream house will cost more than my dream house
Yeah.
because they aspire to live in that place. Whereas I, like I said, I literally couldn't think of anything worse. So
Yeah.
it's just relative. It's just relative. It depends what your personality is like, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it is, like you said, it's super relative. I think what you're doing is also super important. Like, what type of business is this? If you're doing something, because I think you made such a great point earlier that everyone thinks if you want to do a startup, it has to be this unique idea that no one's thought of. But all you need, like, I've been watching Shark Tank for years. I know it's all glamorized and stuff, but the shit they talk about is real. What are sales? What is this? What is that? Is this a better product than what's out there? It just needs to be better. If it's better, you're good.
Well, if you take my business that I sold, for example, it was online security training. So just literal online training about phishing emails, passwords, all that sort of shit. Like there are loads of companies out there doing it. Not millions, but there's a lot already there. When I entered the market, there was the biggest competitor had just been valued at $1 billion.
Wow.
And then there was me with my laptop that turned off every 10 minutes, my wife doing voiceovers on a shit microphone that we bought for like 20 quid. And you're thinking like, am I mental? Like, what am I doing competing against that? But also I looked at their training and I was like, the training content they provide is crap. Like it's rubbish. I've got no experience in animation or creating training, but I just thought, fuck it. I can probably do something better than that. So I just literally, my sole kind of initial challenge was their training's crap. Can I make it better than that? And that's all I did. I just made it better than that. And then I went to like local networking events, really small stuff with very small companies. Got my first client on. There were 3 employees. It was £15 a month. Like, obviously not going to make me a millionaire.
Yeah.
But I managed to show them what I'd made. They liked it. They thought it was going to be interesting, a good way to help train the staff because they were struggling to know how to communicate that. And then over time that built, and I got a 20-person company, a 50-person company, 100, 1,000, 5,000. And then all of a sudden your contracts are going from £15 a month to like $5,000 a month. And then, you can see how it can scale quite quickly there. But yeah, when I started, massive players in the game, but I just looked at what they were doing and I went, I can do that better.
Yeah.
And that is as simple as that. And it's, online training, that's like probably one of the most boring sectors there is. But yeah, can you just disrupt it? You don't, and sometimes it's even simpler than that. Can you do it better, cheaper, faster, whatever it might be? There's so many permutations of anything.
Yeah.
Because I always say there aren't really any unique ideas anymore. That's why movies keep getting remade, remakes, the sequels, because there aren't that many unique ideas. And that the same applies to business. There are some, but not many.
Yeah.
So can you do it better? Can you execute it better? That's it.
No, 100%, man. And I think you made a really good point that there does seem to be like a lack of unique ideas, something that no one else in the world has thought of, tried, or is doing. You know what I mean? And I think the example you use is great. That's why things get remade. That's why when one new company, when there is that one unique idea, there's like 10 copies of that because that's the new thing down the line. Like Instagram was the one. Okay, then all that came. Then Snapchat came, and then all that came. I think it's just how it works. I think that's just the way it is nowadays. But on the point that you made, which I think is super important, because this is something I think about a lot. When you're talking about like, all you need to do is faster, cheaper, or better. Those 3, besides the idea itself, you can do any one or any of those 3 things. You have something, you have something to do. So when we talk about things like barriers to entry, now you hear this all the time, especially in this, as a startup or in the startup world, that I want to go into the restaurant industry. It's lots of competition there. Okay, I want to go into the hotel industry. So no matter what you talk about, no matter what it's about, there's a shitload of competition everywhere. So I've never understood why, just because there is why would that stop me from doing it if I can do one of those three things?
Yeah, and if anything, I would say having a competitor in that space should give you some reassurance that it's got room for growth. So when
Ah,
I
that's
looked at
good.
that,
That's really true, actually. Yeah.
yeah, well, because otherwise, if there's competitors in there, it means, and they've been around for a while and they're doing well, it means there's business there clearly, and also the world's a big place. There's enough business for everybody. So like for me, when I looked at that company, it was just been valued at $1 billion. I was like, look, clearly I cannot compete with them on probably most areas of business, obviously. But can I just do that one thing that they do in that little section and do it better and just work on that? And my theory was, well, look, fucking hell, they've just been valued at $1 billion and my training's better. Then,
Yeah.
you're onto a winner, aren't you?
Yeah.
Really? So just don't be afraid don't be scared off by competitors.
Yeah, but I think you said such a great point that I've never even thought of is if there are competitors, that is reassuring because that shows you there's business there. And I've never looked at it or thought of it that way. That like just blew my mind with that because it's so true. Because you think competition like is, move away, competition bad. But if there's competition, like, oh, okay, so there's room. There's room for more competition, I guess, in the space.
Yeah, look, the world's a huge place. Like there's,
Yeah.
you could you know, start up exactly the same business that I had again, and there'd still be space for it. You'd still have to do loads right to earn the customers, but there'd still be space for it.
Yeah. I wanted to come on to a couple of different points that you talked about when you're talking about what are the things like tips to start a business and what are some of the mistakes that people make. Now, one thing, and this one is also kind of a personal question as well, I'm genuinely curious how you think of it. I know so you did law, then you were doing that private investigative thing for a while. So that was like consulting, and then you created the online platform, right? And the online platform was something that's scalable because it's SaaS and so on. So you have the thing and it's just more customers, everything's ready there. Now in a service in the work like I do or other people who have businesses that it's just them. Like I'm the entire business. I'm the consultant, I'm the producer, I'm this, I'm that. Like there's no team around me. There's no one. I am the service. I offer the service, but I am the service too. So the question I had to you is, when the business is structured like that, or it is like in my case, that's kind of how it is. What advice would you have to someone like that? How do you start scaling that? And because you talked about how important it is to find support, but I'm like, I don't know but if I'm the business, what support do I need? It's a tricky thing when you're in that freelance world.
Yeah. So the question then probably is how, for example, in your shoes where you're the, you do everything, how you could then make it a scalable offering.
Yeah, really. Exactly. Yeah.
So I think you probably have to think about how you want to scale it. So when you're doing a service-based business, the obvious way to scale it is to add more people into that business who can help you provide more service. So you'd hire another 3 people effectively to do your job, and that's kind of the classic sort of marketing agency route, really. Now that's very different to trying to create a scalable platform, for example. And they're very different for multiple reasons. Obviously, one's selling time still, but you're just adding multiples of people to sell the time. The other one's in a platform which is infinitely scalable, essentially, as long as the tech holds out. Now, just before I kind of go into the answer, 2 things to think about with that are, if you want an exit, as an example, you will get an infinitely higher valuation on a scalable software platform than you will on a service-based business.
Absolutely.
So as a rough guide, a software business, you can get 10x revenue, whereas a service-based business, it varies massively, but let's put 3x on it. But yeah, you can get a significant for your software. So you might want to think about, what do you want? And they all come with a different array of headache. Like, I don't think service is easier than SaaS. I don't think SaaS is easier than service, because while with service you might have people to manage and the problems that brings, and hiring and firing more people, SaaS brings you technology problems, platforms, outages, developer costs, endless stuff. So my first kind of question for people looking to maybe branch out and think about creating something bigger is, which way do you think you might want to go? And that could be massively determined by what you're offering, obviously.
Sure.
However, as is quite popular these days, it's about thinking about what are the opportunities to make something scalable in your niche. So, for example, in podcast producing, like you do, it might be a online course. I mean, that's a super obvious thing at the moment.
Sure.
So that's a sort of fairly scalable solution. It might be some sort of software which helps people determine better analytics for the impact or the ROI that podcast is having. Because I run a podcast and that's really hard to determine. And so it could be like some sort of tech analytics type thing. So it's about thinking of what the problems are that you could solve. And so it might be you want to help everyone launch a really good podcast, and that might be why a course might work well. But you might also recognize in your industry or your sector, well, no one can put the finger on the value that brings, or if they spend X, Y, what, I don't know, whatever it might be. But thinking about the problems that might be in that sector that you're in, and then thinking how to tackle them. And if it's a tech platform, obviously it's infinitely more scalable. But if it's infinitely more scalable, you need a mass market.
Yeah.
So it just depends. It's about kind of testing out. But interestingly, before I started the cybersecurity business, that wasn't one of the ideas that I had. One of the ideas that I had, I done a little bit of intellectual property law at the law firm, and I found it interesting. And I got on the call someone via LinkedIn, and I went and spent the day at Adidas.
Oh wow! And, okay.
A guy, and literally that was just me. Messaged him on LinkedIn, had a phone call. Basically said, "I'd love to come in and see what you do day to day to see if I can find a problem. Like, as in, is there something that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing?" And so went in. He was a really nice guy, really really grateful for his time, and we chatted through all the systems that he uses and basically why that system isn't as good as it could be. And I didn't end up going into anything that we discussed, but just doing that alone, you were like, shit, they're using this system, which actually doesn't really give them all the data that they need. And if I could create something that did that job, but for everybody, that would be a multi-million-pound idea. So yeah, it's about being open to pain points, and it needs to be a big enough pain point for people to solve. And so in my case, my example was cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is still a hot topic, but was a super hot topic 3 years ago, 4 years ago when I started, or 5 years ago now. It was a super hot topic, and small businesses were struggling to know how to deal with it. Yeah. So it was a natural pain point. I knew people were already doing it. I could plug it at that gap with better training, targeted at a smaller audience, and then I grew that. So yeah, it's about, in your case, what are the problems that people are facing around your skill set?
Yeah, I think that's really, 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 really good advice, to look out and actually maybe even seek out the pain points that are whatever in your industry and see, number one, do I have the skills to solve that? If I don't, how would it take me long to do that? And then try to, combine a couple of things together. So I think there's a lot of different options, but I guess that's the mindset. If you're a solopreneur, quotation marks, and you're the business, that's how, I guess that's what opens you up to scale, for potential scale.
Yeah. You've got to find the opportunity. Like, anyone can make an online course and you can make a lot of money doing that. But can you find a problem? Like, I had no right to ring up some guy from Adidas and ask for a day in the office with him. And like, I'm not even a tech guy. So for me to go into a business and go, and like I was just like literally as a sponge, taking all the information in to think, is that a problem? Could I fix that? Is there a way I could fix that? And then I took those things away, and I spoke to a couple of developers like, oh, well, this is their problem that they're having, blah, blah, blah. And, it never went anywhere because I ended up moving the idea, but that process was still super useful.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And that's really, really great advice. So I really appreciate it. Also, personally for myself, that's a good way to think about it. One of the things when you talked about how people chase the wrong things. Now, when you said that, I'm like, that was really like a spark. I'm like, okay, what does he mean by that? Because at the end of the day, as I'm going to assume business in general, not nonprofits, right? the point of a business is to make profit, right? And you said
Yeah.
specifically, follow the money. That should be the primary goal of whatever business you're doing. That should be the focus. So the question I have to you is, why are there so many companies that they're just focused on growth and investment as being more important? You get a big investment, we just want to grow, but then you're going to reach a point you're not making profit, so that burn rate is going to run out decently, and then you raise again and it goes up, or raise again and it goes up. So the question I have for you is, how does a company grow? How does that work when you're not making profit, and but the value of your business is somehow growing, but you're not profitable? In my mind, I don't understand it. So I'm curious to see what.
It's a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I always call it. It's the kind of Uber argument, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Exactly.
are they even making money yet? I don't even know. I've lost interest in trying to keep track of that. The theory behind that, I think, is if you can demonstrate traction, take investment, demonstrate more traction, and it's continuing to build, then obviously the valuation as the founder is getting better, but the business still needs to be profitable. That's the whole point of a business, as you say. So it's like, when is it going to become profitable? Now, I guess it's different appetites. Like there'll be the VC funds who are chasing this unicorn,
Yeah,
and they're willing to bankroll it come hell or high water. But I think the problem we have with that is media puts a really unhealthy obsession on that. And investment as a whole. So small businesses, when I say small business, I include anything under 10 million in that. They have a warped view of what investment should be, or what it really means. And I see it at all levels. Like I see it at startups. Like I spoke to a startup who was going through funding to raise 300 grand. I think it was like off a 3 million valuation. And they'd sold no product. I could nearly count on my hands and toes how much they've sold. And it's like, that is fucking bonkers. Like, raising that much money with that sort of valuation, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, because then what happens is you get a valuation like that, and then you are probably not going to prove the traction that you think you are. And therefore, if you want to get any more money, no one's going to play ball with you, because you've gone in way too high early. Whereas really what you should do is almost this sort of Shark Tank, Dragon's Den thing, where you go to 1, 2, 3 private angel investors. You probably give away a bit more money than you'd like. A bit more equity than you'd like, but you get that early traction, you get that help, rather than trying to be too big too early, which I do see happen quite a lot. So there's a weird obsession with investment, and it's unhealthy, I think, overall.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, some businesses need it, I should add.
Sure, for sure. Absolutely.
I'm looking at a few businesses that I'm involved in. We're looking at it because we might need it. It might be the thing that gets us to the next level without having to grind. But by the same token, you don't always need it. Yeah,
exactly. And for using your example, you didn't get in any investment, you bootstrapped it, and you built the business, and then eventually sold it. And I know, and like you correctly said, I think the media, and there's a warped perception of this drive for investment when you're a startup. You hear all the time, this X company raised 5 million, 10 million. I always thought that the bigger your valuation, no matter the stage, the better. But I learned from a TV show that is a bad that is a bad thing.
Well, exactly. I mean, you have a business worth 2 million quid on paper, because that's what your valuation says, but no fucker's going to pay you 2 million pounds for it. So it's not worth 2 million quid, is it? It's just the vanity. It's just it's a vanity metric, really.
100%. And you said to build it first, and then try to look for something like that. But also, I know you're not. Listen, what I appreciate is you said it in the other podcast. You're like, I'm not anti-investment. I just don't think that should be the primary objective. So now the question I have for you, because now you're now also in a position to invest. So when you're looking at it as an investor now, do you run through the same kind of questions when you're looking to invest in a company? Like, do they need it, or is it more from just a personal thing that I think I can make a good return on this?
100%. And this is why I'll never be a great investor, truth be told, because not as in I won't be a good investor, make good investments. I will, but because I'm probably too honest. And that comes down to that question of greed earlier. So I had someone come to me the other day with an amazing business idea, amazing. And she'll know who I'm talking about when she hears this. Got a business idea, her and a partner, proven model. They've already had some major interest. They don't have loads of money to start out, but the contracts that they can get in the next 2 or 3 months would be more than enough to make that a completely bootstrap business, more than enough.
Yeah.
And I said to her, I said, like, I can give you 10 or 20 grand here, to take some of your, take some, I don't know, 10% equity or whatever. However, you don't need it. You don't need it. Like if you do that now, you're going to give that away. Now, that person has actually gone somewhere else and they've offered her that and she's accepted it. So I talked myself out of what would have been a very good investment, but I maintain they didn't need it. So why would I try and tell them or convince them that they do? Just for what? For me to have some greed, like more money. What's the point in that?
Yeah.
Now that's bad business, obviously, but we don't always have to be dickheads in business, is my view. So why not, like, I get a much bigger buzz out of seeing people succeed and do well, and I still help her and I give her advice and all that for free because I want her to do well. But yeah, I don't think we should always be in it for what's in it for me, because like my view is I've done all right. I'm fine now. I don't need anything else from other people. Like,
yeah. And it feels good now you're in a position that you can give back, and which is what you're doing exactly with with GoFounders, which I was gonna come on to. I'm gonna come on to in just a minute. I just had one more thing I wanted to touch on with because you talk about this a lot of the time on LinkedIn and stuff. The bullshit gurus, the overnight success, the getting paid while you sleep, like all that bullshit. And the question I have is, number one, I love that there's someone on LinkedIn actually like speaking out like properly, please, because I feel I don't know about you, Eddie. I know it's important to be on LinkedIn. I know it's active. I really was for a while, but honestly, I was exhausted. I'm like, every day I'm commenting, love this, this is my view. Like my comments were never in disagreement. They were always in support, and I wasn't commenting on a post just to comment on a post. If I liked it, okay, I would say something. But I feel it's a very one direction, one perspective. It's almost Instagrammy, but in a business way. On LinkedIn.
Yeah, not popularist, if that's a word.
Yeah. There you go. Exactly. So my question is, why? I guess why are people so drawn to this kind of to these gurus and to these overnight successes? Because read all the top guys in the world, anyone who has started a business and made it successful and launched it, like it took years, it took grind, it took hard work, but still this guy can give it to me in 3 months. So is it just laziness and no patience? Yeah. It's like, what is it?
Yeah, exactly that. I think it's we live in a world where anyone can like make themselves appear more successful than they are. And I kind of always say when I'm doing little talks that I am just another dickhead on the internet. So don't take what I'm saying as gospel either. Like what worked for me might not work for you. Yeah. Just because I've got an opinion doesn't make it right. But I think anyone can portray that they're successful because they can rent the nice car and they can get a picture next to a plane or whatever bullshit it is that they're posing with. And people buy into that because they're looking for an escape, and people want to escape quickly. People rarely want to escape in 3 years' time, having worked their ass off. They want to escape the position they're in right now because they hate their boss, blah, blah, blah. And very rarely want to really knuckle down and sacrifice things either. They want everything without sacrifice. So they hate their job, but they're not giving up their leased car. They want to keep their Mercedes. They want to go on holiday to Dubai twice a year, or go skiing, or whatever it might be. So they're not that motivated to escape. Whereas these people are offering them a way to maintain their current lifestyle realistically, as well as like get this overnight instant gratification. And that's a problem with society, is instant gratification, isn't it? That's why we're all hooked on social media. It's why, you know, things like Tinder are more successful than probably other dating apps, because there's an instant gratification in like, you know, being liked, or I don't know, connecting with people. It's everything's very fleeting, isn't it? Which doesn't lend itself well to the idea of, yeah, if you want to build a business, it's going to take you 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's not sexy. It's like I said right at the start of the podcast, like what I say will never go viral because it's not sexy. It's like honest, and that'll only appeal to a certain percentage of the population, because a lot of the population want to believe in the bullshit stories and the rags to riches stories and all this sort of crap, because we're I don't know, as human beings, we want to believe in that, we want to see that, but there's always, you know, my audience is probably the 1% of skeptics in a way, who are not skeptics, realists.
Yeah.
And that's why my shit will never go viral, because or hopefully don't play up to that.
Yeah, but I think you made a really good point about the concept of instant gratification, and especially with like social media, you know, even just ordering Amazon, like I don't want it tomorrow, I want it in like 5 seconds. Like we've become, myself included, I'm a human, you know. I'm not saying I'm with everyone in all this.
And you know what is a really good example of instant gratification in business is branding. So like, and I'm really guilty of this all the time. Like if I get like an idea, I won't go straight to fleshing out the financials or the market research or testing. I'll go straight to a name and a logo and all that, because that's sexy. That's the stuff that you get a buzz out of. And actually the rest of it, that's all hard work. I don't want to do that shit. Yeah. And that hard work might reveal that it's a bad idea. So instead I'll just do the sexy stuff. And you know, I still fall victim of that. And I think people do when they're starting a business. It's just, that's an instant gratification, isn't it? You can get a logo and you're in business. A bad idea, but
yeah. No, I totally agree, man. And I think it's kind of like on the instant gratification part, when you were talking about it, I was thinking about it mirrors so perfectly to like weight loss. How many weight loss things? I want to lose 5 kilos in half an hour if I could. Like I do it. I think it's just about getting rid of that pain. Whatever.
Toner belts.
Yeah.
Like, come on, like they're not going to work. Go to the fucking gym. Eat less. Eat less. Move more. That is literally the.
But that's not sexy. That's not what I want. I want it now. I don't want it quick. Yeah. I feel you. On the concept of I guess getting distracted. Now I know you talked about follow the money. Find the support, you know, have a community around you, people to support you, not necessarily financially, but ideas and stuff. And that's one of the things actually that I've been talking to my friends about recently. I'm like, I feel like I'm walking in a forest with no map. I'm like, okay, the mountain's there. I've, you know, picked up some nice logs along the way, you know, some clients, you know, things are moving, but I'm like, I don't know, do I go left? Do I go right? Do I go backwards? Do I go straight? And I think, and it can get, at least in my experience, it gets quite overwhelming. Like, I don't know which way to go. What's the right move? And then you just kind of like, sometimes you're stuck in like one spot just for a little while. So my question to you is, how do you fucking just clear through that, you know, especially when you're starting a business, because you don't know what follow the money. If the priority is generating revenue, profit, which it should be, I still don't, that's the step. But there's a step before that that's going to take me, you know, to that step. And I think that's where some people tend to get lost. Myself included. I'm still learning, you know, as I go along as well.
And that is also perfectly normal. I think and I've been through that with the Defence Works, my first business, and I'm going through that again now. Even I think the challenge is not being paralyzed by it almost. So
exactly.
Any progress is progress. I think sometimes, I have been, and I still am guilty of that. I'll look at it and I would think, fuck, I don't even know what to do next. So I've got 100 different ideas. What do I do? So and the problem you can have there is you can just sit looking at the 100 ideas for a week and not do anything. So it's about, like I say, any progress is progress. So normally how I would approach it is I'll look at whatever I've got on my desk, whether that's a to-do list, whether that's maybe ideas I need to try, or things I think that could work for the business. And I'll prioritize them based on what's nearest the money. Like, if I can do that and it's going to earn me a few £100 a month, like, then I'll just put all my eggs into that and just go for it. But the second rung on that is testing the waters, really. Like, if I look at the defense works, Christ, I will have spent so much money on stuff that didn't work, but I wouldn't have known that unless I tried it. Exactly. And I kick myself because I'm like, oh, I've just wasted £1,000 there, or whatever it might be. But unless you try it, you don't know. You can learn from other people's mistakes.
For sure.
I can sit and we could have a 2-hour conversation, and you could say, well, I'm thinking about this, and I'll say that might not work, that might work. Thing is, things that didn't work for me could still work for you. So I'd always have to caveat my advice with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in terms of like making those next steps, is any progress is good progress. Ask the questions. Like, if you've got things in front of you that you think you want to do, you need to test them. And sometimes that can be actually putting money behind them and testing them. It can be just doing them and testing them. It can be getting advice from people who've also been there and done it. They're all legit options. I think the bit that people really struggle with is, yeah, but what's that thing I should test, or what's that thing I should ask? And truthfully, no one can tell you that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know your business well enough to ask that question. So if I was working with you and like mentoring you, for example, I'd still need you to come to me with some of the ideas.
Sure.
I could certainly give you some in terms of like scaling and what we spoke about earlier, and things you need to explore, but you'd still need to go away and do them and test them.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one. There's no right path. 100%. Well.
Yeah.
It's a long path, and it's a windy path. There's lots of wrong turns, dead ends, all that. It's just the thing that I was chatting with a friend about the other day is it's about making decisions that won't kill you. So you just need to whatever you do, it can't be a risk everything decision.
Yeah.
In my view, some people will think they can do that.
Yeah.
But you're much likely to fail. Whereas because I'd bootstrapped, I had to make a business case in my own brain every time I spent money. So when I had like a marketing opportunity that was going to cost me £1,000, I didn't just go, oh, sod it, I'll just do it. It was like, no, £1,000. How long did that take me to get that first 15 quid? That is still £1,000. I've got to think about this and really test it. And when I do test it, I don't just mean spend it. I mean, spend it and look at what that got back. So, because I see this time and time again, people don't analyze the results. They just spend it, and they kind of meander to success, or they meander to failure. They don't actually analyze and go, well, that's doing this for me, that's doing that for me. Right, well, fuck that off because it's shit. Put all your money into that, or all your time into that. You've got to really break down what you're spending time on, looking where the success is happening. For example, even in your own business, there'll be elements of what you do that will be more successful than others. So there's a very good case to say, pie that stuff off, or outsource it, or make a resource so people can do that bit themselves and focus on the bit that's really working for you, because that's the holy grail bit right there. So sometimes it's a focus thing. It's having someone just to bounce ideas off is crucial. And just asking the right questions.
I think that's really, really some refreshing and amazing advice, man. I think, like you said, there's no one right answer. No one can really tell you. They can suggest, but at the end of the day, if from everything you said and everything we've talked about, I think the smart thing to do, or the best way to move forward, is reminding yourself any progress is progress. I try to remind myself of that, but I don't know if, I'm sure you maybe can relate to this when you're building a business. when I get like one client, I'm like, fuck it, yeah, I got a client. I'm happy literally for what, an hour, 2 hours after I've had the client. I'm like, okay, good day. Then your brain's like, oh, fuck me. Okay, where do we get the next? Where do we get the next one?
100%. And,
Yeah,
and I've had that all the way through,
yeah,
like
yeah,
all
yeah.
the way through. Where, when I started, the thought of signing on a client at $5 a month, like, would have been insane. By the time I was signing on that $5 client, I was like, oh, fuck, that's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So stupid, but it's true. The one thing that I didn't do from the off, but I implemented not long after, and it's so simple. And I've mentioned this on a couple of podcasts before, but highly recommend it. Just as daft as it is, write down like a list of it, like key achievements, that like milestones that you want to achieve. And funnily enough, the reason I like this so much is I've actually put it into GoFounder as a feature. Is as simple as, me and my wife had a piece of paper on the fridge with milestones, and it was just shit stuff. It was like first 10 clients, and then attached to that was a shit reward. So it's like first 10 clients will go to the pub, because like
Yeah.
that was relative to us staying in the house at the time. But first American client, and then the award, like reward to that was have hot dogs,
Mm.
because it was like loosely American. First international client, best sales month yet, first 10K month, first hire, first office, second hire, all those milestones, paying yourself a wage, all those milestones that if you're not careful, you'll smash through the milestones, but you'll not ever stop and pat yourself on the back. Because it was my missus who made me do it, because she was like, Eddie, you're achieving something, but you're just straight on to the next thing. You're not stopping to think, shit, look how far I've come.
Yeah.
And there's so much power and value in just stopping and almost like exercising gratitude, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something I never really kind of was particularly mindful of prior, but now I massively try and like look and go, fuck, I'm well lucky. This is a great position to be in, or that month was mega because of these reasons. And yeah, just reward yourself.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden you feel like you've accomplished more, and it'll give you that boost and encouragement and reinvigorate you really to kind of push on harder.
Exactly. Absolutely, man. You said it perfectly. My fiance tells me all the time, if like when I've had a good week, she's like, "Oh, you had a good week this week." I'm like, "Yeah," but like, it was like, I'm like, it's not the week I wanted, whether it was my productivity, whether it was what I accomplished, but I'm like, it's
But if you had that list on your fridge with all those things,
yeah.
you'd go, well, actually, yeah, all that shit stuff might have happened, but I got my first international client.
Yeah.
So I've got to have that reward. And it makes you stop and go, actually, yeah, some bad stuff happened, but some good stuff happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. That's really great advice. I think we don't practice gratitude enough. Without doing a startup anyway, whatever in life, I don't think we do it enough. I always advise people to do it, and yeah, I like to do it. I think that's the crux of every person. I can give you the best advice, but if you tell me the same thing, I'm like, yeah, I don't know about me. Yeah, I don't know if it works for me, but like definitely for you, you should definitely do it.
Yeah.
But but anyway, I just had a few more questions for you, Eddie. I want to talk about the whole concept of, I guess, trust when you're building out the startup, because you're bootstrap, like in your case especially, you're bootstrapping it, so it's literally all you, it's all your money. It's not you had an investment that you're sourcing from that to build the team and pay salaries and so on. So I guess, how do you learn to, when you've been doing everything yourself and you trust yourself, obviously you trust your wife, of course, how do you start to like trust new people to build that out?
Yeah, really tough. I think you have to recognize that you're not going to be that great at most stuff.
Mm.
Like, and also you've got to hire, you've got to move it forward, or you're never ever going to grow the business. For me, the first hire, I was super lucky. She was amazing, super talented. But the interesting thing was, I actually brought her on originally as like, I don't know what the universal term, but we called it like business development manager, so sales, effectively.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was the role she was brought in for. But actually, and this is a mistake that every business makes, they always try and hire a salesperson first, and 99% of the time, that's the wrong hire. in my experience, because you go from a position of being the salesman to then trying to give it to this new person to sell, and they're not going to be as good a salesperson as you.
Of
And
course.
your business is so young, you need your best salesperson. So actually, she came in, wasn't doing that well on the sales, but that was my fault because I tried to make her do sales, basically. So I ended up basically changing her role. So I gave her more of the responsibilities that I was doing that weren't sales related.
Yeah.
And so that she would pick them up, and lo and behold, that obviously that really worked. So she was able to pick up loads of the stuff, free up loads of my time, so I could focus more on the sales, and then the business grew like that.
Yeah.
But there's elements of with any member of staff, depending what they do, if they do some stuff that you're capable of, there'll be an element of you might be a perfectionist, and in your head you might think the work you do is a 10 out of 10 and the work they do is an 8 out of 10, but tough shit.
Yeah.
If it's good enough, it's good enough.
Exactly.
And to grow a business, you need to get into that mindset anyway, even with the stuff that you produce yourself. So my view is always, is that a 7 out of 10? Yeah, fine, fuck it, it'll do. If it's below 7 out of 10, we need to improve it. It's not good enough. But if it's 7 out of 10, like, is that social post that good? Well, 7 out of 10, it'll do. Is that piece of training content the best it could possibly be? Well, no, because to get it to a 10, I'm going to have to spend 3 months on it. But I've taken a week on it and it's at a 7. Right, fuck it, that'll do.
Yeah.
Because you can spend ages chasing perfection.
Absolutely.
And that massively applies when you're hiring staff in the nicest way.
Yeah.
You need to accept that they're not going to do everything the same way you do it. That doesn't mean they're doing it wrong. You just might have a way you've got it in your brain. But by the same token, there's loads of stuff and loads of tools you can do to make life easier. One thing I wished I'd done when I'd started was like recording processes for stuff. Okay. Whether that's if you're using a platform, using a tool like Loom, where you can screen record and you can kind of talk over the things that you're doing, so it's quite methodical. That's a great way to pass that out, or outsource that as well, save yourself some time. But just like processing and putting a process in place for the different elements of things, that whether that's an employee is going to take on, so that they're doing it right, or you can outsource it to free yourself some time. Yeah, they're all things to consider when you're hiring, really.
Yeah, exactly. I think you made a really interesting point that I never considered about how a lot of startups tend to hire a salesperson first, because I guess I get why they would do it. Logically it makes sense, but at the same time, they're not going to be able to sell the product as well as you can. It's your business, and it's not at the stage yet that someone else will be able to describe it or give it the same emotion or convey that message as well as you do. I think that's a really, really interesting point. And it kind of brought me on to my next question. And you touched on it briefly, how one of the things that you wished you had at the time was recording the processes of how you did things. Probably would have streamlined things a lot better. But now with GoFounder, sorry. So people who don't know, guys, it's a community to help and support all startups, and you guys have trainings, podcasts, accountability, literally an A to Z and a community to help startups get to where they are, and it's kind of everything you wish you had, but you didn't have. So from your experience, Eddie, with DefenseWorks, what would you say were the biggest mistakes and lessons you took from that experience?
I think setting expectations, probably. So okay. I was super naive and I thought everything would happen much quicker than it did. And my story was relatively quick. But I think everything, whether that's from how long I thought it'd take me to get my first paying customer, or how long I thought it might take to an exit, or even like how long it would take me to get through my to-do list in the day. Like, how often do we all have a to-do list that's a page long and you don't even fucking scratch the surface on the day? And to finding a level of comfort with that is really important, because I had a really tough period mentally where probably 6 months where I was like really beating myself up because we weren't moving fast enough, or we weren't being productive enough, or whatever. And it was just super negative, and the reality is when I look back, well, we were still moving. We were probably moving rapid as fuck compared to most big companies. But in my mind, it wasn't moving as fast as it could. But it was only in my mind. Like I'd put that time scale in my head. No one else had. It was just me thinking it needed to be that fast.
Yeah.
So I think, realistic expectation setting, like everything takes longer than you think.
Yeah.
And just kind of like trying to enjoy the journey a bit more, because that is easy for me to say, but that's the fucking fun. That is the fucking fun bit.
Yeah. No, 100%, man. I think that is such a big lesson, you know, that you took from that. And I think in that, setting expectations applies to not just business, not just your startup, to everything in your life, to, you know, expectations of your partner, expectations of your family, you know, everything. So it's being realistic and setting your expectations correctly, or in a tapered manner, to use, you know, that term that you said. I guess sets you, at least you're not going to be as disappointed as you would be if it was completely, you know, unrealistic and out the way. Eddie, I just have two more questions for you. These are questions that I ask all my guests. So I'm interested, and I'm curious to hear what you're going to say for this one. So looking back at your career, or personally, professionally, whatever the case, if I ask you, what are you most proud of for yourself, what would you say?
Oh God. Well, aside from my wife and children, I have to probably aside from them.
Whatever you're most proud of. It could be wife and children.
If she's listening, it's obviously that. But in terms of, like, I guess from a business perspective, I don't know, probably, or hopefully having an impact on the people that I've worked with. Like, for example, an amazing member of staff came straight from university, joined my crappy little cybersecurity company. She massively stepped up to the plate, was such an amazing member of staff for me. And then she's gone and got a job at the National Cybersecurity Centre. So a government job in a cyber role. And like, I don't know, like that. She was so nervous and like upset handing a notice in, but I was like, don't be, I'm fucking buzzing for you. Like, that's the whole point of coming and working at like a startup. Like, that is literally the point.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, hopefully having a positive impact on people's lives, I guess, and that's kind of like, as cheesy as it is, part of the inspiration with GoFounder. It's like, can there be more to what I'm doing than just me making some money for myself? Can there be a bit of a legacy? And that sounds super cheesy, so I apologize. But like, I think, I think people who do all right for themselves have a responsibility to try and do good for other people.
Yeah.
So if I can do a little bit and help a few people, I'll be buzzing. If GoFounder helps one person get a decent business off the ground, I will be fucking buzzing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I really, really, really love that, and I resonate with that, 100% in everything I do. Everything I'm doing, this podcast, our conversation today, is that someone somewhere, if they listen to this and they're like, oh fuck, listening to Khaled and Eddie, now I have the motivation to do my startup, or I'm not gonna make that mistake, whatever the case might be. If I've just helped someone, yes, do I want to make money? Absolutely. I'm not like a saint here.
Yeah.
No fucking around. But
you can make money and do good.
Exactly, and that's the point. And I think that's what makes
invariably, the more money you make, the more good you can do. Like, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, and it makes it so much more. I think it feels more fulfilling as well. Like inside, I feel really good when that does happen. And for my last question, Eddie, what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
Ooh. Do dream big, contrary to what we've said. but be realistic. But the only person that can get you where you want to be is you. Don't look for answers in the bullshit stuff that's out there, because they won't be there. Find people who genuinely want to help you. They are out there. Find someone who you can pick the brain of. Find a friend who you can confide in, and try and better yourself. You don't have to settle for whatever your position you're in now. You can better yourself. And better yourself doesn't mean starting a business. It can just be exercising gratitude. It can be anything, but just whatever position you're in now doesn't define you. So you can go on to do more, achieve more, be more, whatever it is. But yeah, just any progress is good progress.
I love that. Love that, man. I think you said it perfectly. Any progress is progress, and don't get in the way of or don't be the
Yes.
obstacle to stop yourself from getting to where you want to go, because you are the only obstacle. And I really love that, man. Eddie, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show today, man.
Pleasure,
This
mate.
has
Pleasure. I've
been
really enjoyed it.
so much fucking fun. I really love the conversation. Really learned a lot from you. Before we sign off, where can people find you if they want to work with you, want to connect with you? Let us know.
Sure, LinkedIn's always a good one. Just search for me, Eddie Whittingham. You'll see my bald, bearded head on there. And then obviously the platform is GoFounder.com. And like you've said, it's just, I'm trying to build out a community and a set of resources that I just wished I'd had when I'd started, effectively.
Yeah, exactly. So, guys, you heard it here. You can check out Eddie's stuff on LinkedIn or go at GoFounder.com. To everyone, thank you so much for listening, guys. I really appreciate it. Follow, subscribe, share the podcast. I hope that it helps with 2 S's. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace.